Hey, Cubs fans, and welcome to a brand new edition of Cubs on Tap. I'm Ron Luce, joined today by the Juice man himself. Juice, what's up, buddy? We're talking about a 5-1 Cubs victory today, and it feels nice.
Yeah, boring Cubs win, right? They jumped up early in the first inning there with the back-to-backs. May have watched the last Brizzo connection back-to-back ever. Sad, but hey, with that said, take the wins while we can, while you still have a somewhat major league roster out there, and here to talk about a win, man.
Absolutely, and I'll put my little W flag on because, like you said, we are talking about a victory today. It feels good to use this again. I didn't get to use this for a while.
Yeah, well, when you're like 10-30 in the last 40 games, I mean, it's difficult to do that.
Yeah, it's pretty miserable, but in case people didn't catch it again, this was a really nice weekend in Chicago. So there's a very good chance a lot of people weren't watching the game, or at least in a ton of detail. I completely understand that. Obviously, Saturday's game, gong show, bad loss, but they rebounded nicely. Big 5-1 win today. Williams, 4-2 now after today's win. He looked great, and I'm sure we'll talk about him in just a second. Smith is your losing pitcher, and then Kimbrel is needed to get one out, but it counts as a save. So that is his 23rd of the season. We got to see guys like Tepera, Morgan, Winkler, Maples as well today out of the pen. Still kind of the B squad out of the pen. Really no A squad guys besides Tepera getting out of that seventh inning. But Juice, I mean, a great place to start for today's game is Trevor Williams looked awesome today. I mean, that is the best I think he's looked in a Cubs uniform so far.
Yeah, he's the guy that I'm kind of rooting for in this second half because he may not warrant a contract from Jed and company for the Cubs in the future, but he's got a great story, and it seems like his career has been kind of, muddled by injury, and I'm rooting for the kid to land somewhere. Obviously, it actually was going back and forth with Cody on Twitter about this on his last start, talking about how I think Cody had said something along the lines of, would he be a good bullpen arm? And I said, maybe. It's a possibility that if that's what his role in the future was and he dedicated it to being that, he'd be a solid bullpen guy. But with that said, I feel like his time is just at the end of the year. It's over. This is his 1-year deal. The Cubs seem like if they're going to retool on the quick turnaround, maybe some of the younger guys get that 5th and 4th slot. And it just seems like there won't be room for him. But this back half of the year, I don't think he's a trade candidate either. I don't think anybody is really realistically looking for him to be, a depth guy or anything for the back half of the year. But with that said, maybe he pitches well and buys himself another contract somewhere that's not in Chicago. And, good for him. That's I think a lot of times when we watch baseball games like this, we forget that they are human. They're not just pieces on the chessboard that are just disposable. And I think in a lot of ways too, we think in terms of our fandom. And if you would like to see him in a Cub uniform, I think a lot of people would be, on the same opinion as us that this is probably it for him. And we probably wouldn't want to see him in a Cubs uniform next year. But that doesn't mean that for the back half of the year here, we don't root for him to pitch well and the land somewhere else. I think that's something that some fans kind of struggle with. And I know I found myself in that same, arena as well, where I'm like, man, this guy just sucks. I hope that, fire him into the sun. No, you want him to root. You root for some of these guys. That way, they can continue their career because it's hard, man. Once they've worked their whole lives to get to the MLB. And Trevor Williams, by all accounts, has been a wonderful teammate, wonderful guy. Like I said earlier, great story about, his dad being a Cub fan and, him wanting to be a Cub for forever. I think that for the second half, he's one of the guys I'm watching to root for, to land on his feet and to show Major League Ball clubs that, maybe this is, maybe they can tweak around with this guy and figure something out.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's incredibly well said. Like you said, I think he is a guy that you never really heard anything bad about him. So I think it's pretty safe to assume that he's a pretty good dude. And yeah, the story's there and he looked good. And absolutely, I think he's a guy that we're going to see. The storylines as of Friday at about this time are going to shift, not only in the rest of the Cubs media space, but here at Cubs on Tap, because Like you mentioned, Juice, we're going to go from, recapping the trade deadline more or less and what the Cubs ultimately do here in the next 5 days to what does this team now look like for the second half of the season? And just like you mentioned, Trevor Williams, absolutely a guy that I think a lot of people are going to keep an eye on. There's reports that, Jake Arrieta is going to get another look. Now, whether that's another look in the starting rotation or another look in the bullpen, I don't know. But nonetheless, like they're not just going to let him sit on the IL the rest of the year and ride this thing out. They want to see what these guys still potentially have. And Steele is getting stretched out to be a starter, so we'll see him probably at some point in August. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Keegan Thompson get a start or two in August. There's going to be a lot of interesting storylines that will still surround this team. It's just going to be very different storylines than the ones that we've talked about all the way up to this point. And I agree with you. I think he's a guy that a lot of people can get behind and root for and say, hey, I hope he does pitch well. You get a couple nice victories in the dog days of summer, and you keep the vibes going. Like Dope Redbeard said here in the comments, always a vibe with the W hat. I agree. I like wearing my W hat, and if Williams can pitch like that, and like you said, kind of get that next contract, it's awesome for him, and he can continue his major league career. I mean, final stat for him today, he got into some trouble there in the seventh. Obviously, I alluded to earlier, Tapera came in 2/3 clean inning for him to get out of it. But Williams, 6 1/3 today with 5 hits, no runs, no walks, and 6 strikeouts. So, again, by far his best start to me as a Cub. That's the one that stands out the most. I know he had one really good start against Milwaukee way back in April that kind of stands out in the back of my head, but that's about it. So this one was really good and definitely something that I think Cubs fans wanted to see today, and I think just him himself. He's coming back from injury. This is only, his second start now since he returned from the IL. So, big for him. And like you said, if he keeps that up, man, there's probably another contract with somebody in the league.
Yeah, and I think it's hard too because us as fans, the Cubs on Tap crew, it's gonna be hard to find things to root for. Mm-hmm. So you're gonna have to find these tiny stories within the retrospect of what's going on with the ball club in terms of rebuilding. In terms of, there's going to be a lot of movement. And I think that it begs an interesting question do you 6-man rotation it for the future to get guys like Justin Steele, like Keegan Thompson, some starts, regardless if they trade, I've heard some rumblings for Zach Davies, obviously, because he's got an expiring contract. Who knows? Maybe that's a depth move for somebody. But with that said, if you need to find out what you have, and like we said, Trevor Williams, Keegan Thompson, Justin Steele, these are the type of guys that you want to kind of see pitch, for different reasons. Williams, you're trying to get him set up for another contract somewhere else. And, the back two are more or less, you're trying to see if they can carve out a spot in their rotation. I think it's something to look at in terms of protecting Kyle Hendricks as well. If this is a non-competitive year, you might as well limit the starts that Kyle has down the stretch to preserve his arm. Not that he throws so hard, but why waste bullets in the chamber if you're not contending? And I think that may rattle some Cub fans a little bit, considering that, Kyle is somebody that you pay the price of admission to go see. Mm-hmm. But with that said, like, the front office needs to operate down this stretch in a very safe manner to keep guys healthy, to, do what's best for the future of the ball club, because obviously they will be selling off, and the team's going to have a drastic, different look by the time that we roll around next week. When we do a show next week, Sunday, it will be a totally different team in a lot of ways. If it's not, it'll be interesting to talk about the same things we've talked about. Who's getting an extension? Because they're not going to let all these guys walk just for comp picks. Some guys are staying. Yeah,
absolutely. I fully agree with that. And this lineup is going to look vastly different come this time next weekend when we're doing a show. There will be some combination, obviously, of us on it. I'm sure Friday's show will be probably a recap of the deadline, and then Sundays can kind of be that, like, we've had a couple days of this team post deadline, how do we feel type show. So maybe that'll be interesting. Don't remember, interesting question here, Juice. It actually kind of relates along the trade deadline, even to the offseason again, because we throw out the word retool, right, instead of rebuild. To me, retool means we're doing this quickly and on the fly. It's not tear this thing down and wait 5 years, for all these kids to get to the show. And Dope Rebbeer asks in the comments here, he says, with Buxton breaking off extension talks in Minnesota, should he be a target? And then he follows that up, says maybe in the offseason if possible. I would say no. I just don't think he fits what the Cubs need. That's just my personal opinion. I'm not going to be the one that pretends to know everything. But there is reports already surfacing. Again, I'm on my phone 24/7, 365 with Twitter and everything like that. There's reports that the Phillies are already looking at Buxton. So that sounds more of a realistic possibility because they're going all in. Supposedly they're going to be super buyers, which, hey, I don't know where their prospect farm ranks. And I can actually probably look that up here, Juice, when you give your opinion on this. But, hey, if you want Craig and you want KB and you're going to overpay for both of them, come on down, baby. Come on down. And if they're going for Buxton, I mean, they might go all in because – the Mets are struggling. They're without DeGrom. He's on the IL now. And you're only what? I think they're only 2.5 games out or something like that on the Mets right now. I mean, all they have to do is win the NL East. It doesn't matter by how many wins. They just need to win the NL East to get into the playoffs. And then, like you and I talk about all the time, Juice, you mess around, you get into the dance, and you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to see all the reports coming out of the NL East about how all these teams are kind of going for it, minus the Marlins, obviously, because they've kind of been a dumpster fire. But with that said, you kind of look at all the teams that are kind of still in that hunt, very flawed, and the Cubs have, like we talked about on this, a lot of guys who, you can plug and play at a lot of different positions, in each of one of those lineups. It'd be interesting to see what, Byron Buxton would cost. I think more or less on the offseason market. You're not trading for the opportunity to be first in line to sign a guy like that. That's just out of the realm of what the Cubs are kind of doing in terms of the rebuild. You're not giving up, prospects to get back, a guy when you're not contending. That's just. But with that said, I would take a look at it. Who knows what this team looks like, at the end of the year. Mm-hmm. He doesn't fit now, but obviously, there's not a lot of guys who are on this roster for next year that are under contract. So he may, in 4 months, be somebody that you need. Do I think that that's going to happen? I don't. I would probably, hedge against that one being a move that the Cubs make. But with that said, I do think there won't be any stones left unturned by Jed because, as we say, if they're going to do this thing, on the fly, they're going to have to look at adding in via free agency. And I think that's, because if you look at the prospects that they do have who are ready to come up, it's some position players, but a lot of them are towards the pitcher side of it who are closer than the positional guys within the infield. So in the outfield as well. So other than Brendan Davis, you're really kind of looking at, not a lot who seem like they're ready to make that next jump. And even Davis, he's got to go to AAA before he even comes up again, which I think that move is going to be soon anyway. So I do think that it's an intriguing idea. You're looking at a guy who has a lot of potential, who, if you could just unlock it, and the Cubs seem to, kind of do those boomer bust moves pretty often, I would be really interested to see what he costs. And with that said, I think no stone will be left unturned. I think that if that's a guy that they've circled, they'll do their best to make a run at him. But I don't think it'll be until the offseason. We shouldn't be mortgaging prospects now for just the opportunity to be in on a guy like that.
Yeah, and I think that's a fair way of looking at it too. And I looked it up. The Phillies actually have a worse farm system rank than the Cubs do. So again, my preferred destinations for teams, I've been telling people, give me the contenders that have at least above a 16 and above ranked farm system. And right now there's really only 4 of those teams, and it's the Padres, it's the Rays, it's the San Francisco Giants, and it's the White Sox. Those are the 4 teams that if I'm the Cubs, I'm identifying as, okay, we want to be trade partners with you because you actually have the assets to hopefully give us what we want.
And as you name them, the Giants are a sneaky, they will go for it. They've shown in the
Absolutely.
past that they will go for it. They'll make trades
Mhm.
to get over the hump. And I think in regards to that division, if you look at the makeup on it, they were not expected to be winning that division. And there's a lot of chatter out there that they won't, that they'll end up third no matter what, because it's so bunched up around there. And I know that, the Padres are still far. I think they're like 8 games, what are they, 6 games back in that division, something around there.
Something crazy
But
like that.
yeah, but still, with many games left to go in the season, it wouldn't surprise me if they were to shorten that up. With that said, that's a team that maybe hears all the chatter and makes a move strictly because they think that they're this close away and doubted that they make a huge splash to send a message to the rest of the league and the rest of the division. Hey, we're going for it, man. We're a good baseball team. And if we can get, maybe a Chris Bryant or a Craig Kimbrell and maybe in the same package, why not go for it? Because there's so many few times that you actually have a baseball season, especially like them. You look at the guys who are on that roster. It's I want to miss their toys in some way. That you just kind of look at and say, maybe one move gets me to the front of the line and just sets the tone for the second half. And yeah, we're gonna bite the bullet on some good prospects, but who knows how many more chances I have to go after, another World Series, because, the guys on that team, they're older. That's you're looking at Buster Posey, the
Evan Longoria.
Yeah, Evan Longoria. The pillars of that team, they don't have very much baseball left in them. So if you truly owe it to a guy like Buster Posey, maybe you call the Cubs. And maybe, and I hate to say it, but maybe on the back end, that's the way that you get in good with Chris Bryant and you pay him that amount of money that the Cubs won't. And maybe he becomes your pillar of the team that you build around. I hate to say it, because I'm hoping that what happens is the Cubs trade him on a short-term deal and then, come back and re-sign Chris after double dipping for some prospects. But you look at a team like San Francisco, maybe that's a possibility.
Yeah, I mean, they're certainly a team to look at because, like you mentioned, they have a 5-game lead over the Padres, who are in third, only 2 games above the Dodgers. So, they could use that spark. That could be a team, too, that if they really want to go for it, maybe that's the team that calls and says, hey, what is it going to take for both KB and Kimbrel? Because, you never can have enough bullpen arms. They've been pretty much doing all of their closing work out of the pen with Jake McGee as their top closer so far this year, which nothing against McGee. He's been incredible this season.
But he's not Craig Kimbrel.
Could you imagine if the Giants have a guy like Craig Kimbrel? Remember Brian Wilson when they were winning World Series and how good he was for them? You add Kimbrel and KB to that, like you said, that land of misfit toys that aren't named Longoria and Posey. All of a sudden, you got a good ball club that has a real good chance. And like you said, if you feel like you owe it to a guy like Buster Posey to go for another ring and get 4 rings with the team, or a guy like Evan Longoria who's never won a ring but has been damn close a couple times. Maybe that this is the team that does it. And I mean, they're the 11th ranked farm system right now in baseball. So they have the assets to depart with, and they have a lot of guys that are going to be MLB ready soon. So if you're the Cubs and you find a couple guys you really like, maybe you can get a guy who's a borderline roster player already too from them or something of that nature. And it'll certainly be interesting to see.
I think it's win-win for the Cubs too, because if you get in that situation to where you're dealing with the San Francisco Giants, you go straight to San Diego and you say, hey, this is what I'm dealing with right now. I can send this, and you pin it against each other and you let everybody battle it out.
Yep.
And that's how you drive up the price. Because in this market, the Cubs realistically have a lot of the assets that are needed to win a championship, and they're one of the only ones with it.
Yeah, so, that's actually selling, right?
So drive up the price however you can.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree with you. Yeah, if I'm Jed, especially because, like you said, the Giants, you get off the phone with them and say, I'll call you right back. And again, I joke about it, but it's the scene out of Moneyball when, Brad Pitt and Jonah Hill are sitting there with the phones and he's kept screaming to call this guy, and you just keep pushing them against each other. I'm getting this guy. What do you want for this guy type thing?
Yeah.
You do that with the Padres and the Giants, and you say, hey, San Diego, just want to let you know, just got off the phone with the Giants. We really like what they're offering us for KB and Kimbrel. Would you like to rebuke and give a shot yourself, or are you cool with us taking that deal and you guys potentially losing out on a chance to win a championship this season? And then you see what AJ Preller says and does, and then he goes, oh, son of a bitch. And, he's like, oh, well, fine.
Well, here's Mackenzie Gore.
Hey, you know what? I'll tell you what right now. If Jed puts those two teams against each other and lands the number 6 prospect in baseball who's projected to be this, maybe not Cy Young, but at least front of the rotation left-handed pitcher for years to come, and he's only 21, and he's technically MLB ready, whoo, holy shit.
Then you're pairing him with Braylon Marquez.
Yeah, I would be
and
like,
you're pairing him too with Kyle Hendricks, who seems like he's going to age like fine wine.
Like fine wine.
Then all you're doing is you're looking at what guys can I keep here from this core, i.e. Rizzo, Willie. At that point it'd be maybe Baez you're looking at, or you're playing the shortstop market, and then you're not as far off as you think you are.
Yeah,
if you can make a move like that.
Especially if they go get another pitcher too, potentially. Let's say, maybe Mills isn't in the rotation next year, and your rotation consists of something of, again, completely hypothetical, but Gore, Hendricks, Alzolay, maybe Steele if he pitches really well, and then insert free agent name here. And all of a sudden, like you said, that starting rotation looks a lot better. These guys are another year older. You potentially have your answer in center field and Brendan Davis for next year. And that's something I wanted to get to about Aaron's comment, Dope Redbeard's comment about Buxton. I think really the biggest deterrent for them going after Buxton is Brendan Davis and wanting to have somewhere for him to play on a day-to-day basis. But like you said, and then all of a sudden you tweak a little bit here. Maybe you go after an everyday left fielder for this team. Maybe Nicholas Castellanos comes back and he keeps hitting 40 bombs on the Waveland every day. I'm going to keep trying to speak that shit into existence. But again, like you said, though, they're not as far off as some teams are when they're like, we're sellers. You know what I mean? They're not the Colorado Rockies. They're not the Pittsburgh Pirates. There's a lot of talent still in this team. So like you mentioned, it's figuring out which of those pieces they really think, hey, we want to hang on to so-and-so. We don't want to hang on to so-and-so. What do we really need then to fill in? Can we go get those? And again, as much as I love Craig Kimbrel, I already see Rowan Wick as your replacement as a closer. He's at Wrigley today. He was in the dugout for the game. They're going to have him throw, I think they said a simulated game maybe tomorrow. And then, who knows what, maybe he comes back. And as soon as Craig's gone, that's who's you're giving the ball to in the ninth. So, I think they're in an okay position there. And then, I would like to see them double dip a KB too. But again, we'll see, right? We're going to play that we'll see card all the way up until pretty much spring training of next year, because anything can happen between now and roughly March of 2022. So, man, it's gonna be crazy. Again, this week is just gonna be insanity. Like this win felt good today because of what is looming this coming week.
And my advice to all the listeners is take it all with a grain of salt. Nothing is set in stone. Nothing's true until, the clock runs down on Friday. That's the, and regardless, you'll have an opinion if the Cubs won the trade deadline or lost it. It'll never be enough. It'll always be too much. You know what I'm saying? But I think it's an interesting spot to be in. I've seen a lot of bad Cubs slander lately, a lot of ownership slander lately. I think we need to remember too, like, I'm not defending Ricketts. I obviously think that it's pretty terrible that Chris Bryant was not extended earlier. I would love for him to be a Cub for forever. But we also have to remember how dysfunctional the Cubs were prior to when he bought the team.
Facts.
The Cubs are not coming out of this great run without Tom Ricketts. And I know that it's easy right now to be upset with him, but a lot of bad things needed to happen in order for us to arrive at the point we are now.
Yeah.
And I think that while some of this is warranted, he has a blank checkbook where he can do whatever he wishes. but it's also the back half of it that this team did a lot of things to not succeed. They showed you a lot over the past 5 years that maybe this isn't the group together that wins you another one.
Sure.
And I think that's where we need to separate the heart from the brain as a Cub fan and understand that, hey, I love Chris Bryant. I love everything that they did for the Cubs, for 2016, for everything, for the community, for being, the model superstar.
Yeah.
But with that said, I think that there's some serious baseball side of the things, issues with the makeup of this roster. And I think that we're stupid if you don't change something. Now, I think that Chris Bryant is the least one that I want to change, but I know for a fact that I'm not going to get what I want.
Right.
But I am, as a Cub fan, die hard, and I think Jed Hoyer is pretty damn good at his job. And I also think that the Cubs have an unlimited amount of money coming based on around the ballpark, the network. The Cubs are not good. My advice to all the Cub fans, Jed Hoyer is too good at his job, and the Cubs are too money resourceful. They have too many resources in terms of the front office to be failures.
Yeah.
The Cubs are going to be good again real soon.
Yeah.
It may not be next year. It may not be the year after, but within 3 years, they'll be contending to win their division again. I would take the under on it. I think they contend as early, if they make the right moves, I think they contend as early as next year. I think it's going to be wide open.
Yeah.
I mean, the Brewers always have had trouble, attracting free agents to play there. The Cardinals seem to be on a downturn, and who knows what Nolan Arenado does with his option, if he keeps it or if he exercises his after
this season.
The nightmare that this season's been for that squad.
Yeah.
And who's to say that he doesn't exercise it? Because if he did, he would be one of the top 3 in the market in terms of a contract. Yeah. He would be unbelievably high, and there would be astronomical numbers for him to be able to pick from. Who's to say that the Reds? They're still the Reds. And then you talk about Nick Castellanos. He has his option. They've talked about selling, and Pittsburgh never seems to be even close to figuring out if they're gonna turn this thing towards contending again post 2015.
Right.
So my thing is, the Cubs could easily be division favorites next year, barring a few moves. Yeah. Some changes to the roster and some young guys coming up and producing. So I think we owe a lot of that to Tom Ricketts too. So while we can sit here and throw stones, we also have to remember what a mess it was to be a Cub fan underneath the Tribune Company.
Oh,
it was. I mean, people had rocks falling on their heads. That's how bad. Literally, the stadium was crumbling.
Yeah.
So while I do entertain all the Tom Ricketts, smack talk on Twitter or the public lynching.
Yeah.
I think that some of it is really tough to sit here and listen to, and I think some of it is very unwarranted.
Yeah. No, I'm right there with you. I absolutely agree. Again, as somebody who vividly remembers this team during the Tribune era, it was very dysfunctional. I mean, you look at the drafts that they had, they consistently had one of the worst minor leagues in all of baseball every single year. They thought they could be the Yankees and just buy talent, and overpaid guys like Soriano. And he was good for a few years. Don't get me wrong. It's not like he didn't, play to the contract, but they tried to win based on just throwing the book at people, and it didn't work. And then, like you said, with the stadium and with everything else, it was just an absolute gong show. So there has been a lot more stability within this organization ever since Ricketts bought the team. So I will certainly second everything that you had to say there. But it's gonna be interesting, man. I agree. Jed's too good at his job. They have too many resources, and unfortunately, I was ironically sitting there watching the game, and my my dad made a comment about the attendance, because there's a lot of empty seats behind home plate. And I said, when you're not good and you've spoiled a fan base like the Cubs have been for the last 6 years, they expect that now. And when it's not happening, they're not going to pay the most expensive ticket prices in baseball to go to every single game anymore. It's not the lovable losers of, years past. I got 10-minute timers going off now. Sorry about that. God, the Amazon Echoes are great until they all go off in the house for one that's downstairs. But
yeah, it happens.
It happens. Hey, it's just letting me know that there's.
You should ping her, see if she found my Alexa.
That's true. I should ask. I was just saying, you don't know, she's still stuck in St. Louis. I feel for her, and that's terrible. But no, but I mean, just again, like I agree with you. Like the Cubs literally can't afford to be bad for a long stretch of time. The attendance numbers will drop. Like that, there will be a noticeable change if this team is bad for more than maybe just 2021. I agree with you. I think realistically in 2022, if they make the right moves, maybe they don't win the division, but they're at least hovering much closer to the front of the pack than they are right now. They're probably within 2 games of either the Brewers or the Cardinals, because to me, those are the only 2 teams that remotely can be there. And again, like you said, that can completely change if a guy like Nolan Arenado opts out of his contract. Because then it's Paul Goldschmidt and the Funky Bunch is really what that.
Yeah, he's aging. He's not young anymore.
33, I think. He's old. I'm sure they have a good farm system. I mean, they're very middle of the pack right now in farm system. I think they're like either 12 or 15 or something like that. So they're up there. They have some talent. And we all have seen it over the years because we always bitch and moan, or at least I do.
Yeah, but how long does that last without Dan Kantrovitz? That's
fair.
That's
a lot of that was when he was there. A lot of these guys are when he was there. Now, granted, I mean, it'll be interesting to see what a guy like Matthew Liberatore does when he comes up. For those that aren't familiar, Liberatore was actually the one that was traded. There was a 1-for-1 trade. The Cardinals traded with the Rays. And it was everybody at the time was like, why are they getting rid of Liberatore? Like he was one of the top baseball, arm or one of the top, minor league pitchers in baseball. And everybody's like, Rays, we know you have a plethora of minor league pitching, but what are you doing? And then they get a little guy by the name of Randy Arozarena, and now we all see what he's doing. So then we all go, oh, it's the Rays. That's right. They just do this shit, and it always works. And
they're good at that.
They are good at that. They find the hidden gems, and we've seen the graphic how many times this year about guys that the Cardinals have just kind of let leave, and they've actually gone on to do things. Adolis Garcia's in the All-Star game this year for the Rangers. Arozarena's, the ALCS MVP last year. Patrick Wisdom's having a nice season with the Cubs. If he can cut down the strikeout rate, he looks like he could be an everyday MLB player. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, well, shit, man. Yeah, like you said, maybe that farm system right now is just they have that treasure stash still for a little while, but when you spend through it and you can't replenish it, what happens? So there's a lot of question marks. I really do think even with, just a couple of moves being made in the offseason, I'm right there with you, Juice. I think this team can still contend as early as next year because the NL Central is garbage as a whole division. It's not like the Cubs are playing in the AL East. Let's just put it that way. Where you worry about
I'd be a little bit worried.
Or even the NL West.
Yep.
Like if I'm the Diamondbacks or the Rockies, I'm not happy right now. You've got 3 juggernauts in that division. And again, how long does the Giants run last? We don't know. Sure, they have a very good farm system, but not everybody's guaranteed to pan out. The Dodgers are the Dodgers. The Padres are the Padres right now just because they have an embarrassment of riches. But, again, I don't know. The Cubs are definitely in a much better situation, like you said, man. So I have no more to comment on today's game. I think the last thing I can say is I think I've seen enough of Dylan Maples. And,
I think we all have. I think that my gas station comment from April is looming pretty likely. He's
the gas station attendant.
Yeah, he's just not good. And, while you were talking about that, I was curious. When do you think the next time the Dodgers are going to be bad is?
I honestly don't know. It honestly might be never. And the reason let me take that back. As long as Friedman's there, they'll be good. As soon as he leaves, I don't know then. Because that was really the big thing is Friedman did it for so long in Tampa. He's kind of the one that really started that blueprint that Tampa still uses. Yeah. But now he's in a big market with big money that he can do that. So he goes, I'm going to make a trade to get a really good prospect to draft really well. But then I can also keep these guys and pay them a bunch of fucking money because I'm in LA. Yeah. And I'm the big brother in LA, not the little brother in LA.
And they literally have unlimited payroll.
That's unbelievable. Well, yeah, because the Yes Network is Yankees, but the Dodgers network is huge out in LA, so they get plenty of money from that. They're in a huge market that truly loves baseball. California is a big baseball state. LA, everybody loves the Dodgers because they're Again, it's the Dodgers, it's the Yankees, and it's the Cubs as the big brothers in their cities. Now, granted, New York's a little different just because it's so big that the Mets fan base is still pretty big, and even even with like honestly, I think the White Sox are more popular than the Angels are, if we're being entirely honest, at least in those respective markets. But
I could see that.
but just going back, I think as long as Friedman's there and they have that embarrassment of riches in terms of literal resources, they won't be bad. They'll at least hang around, even if they're in like a transition phase. Their transition phase is going to be winning 90 games and winning the wild card instead of winning the fucking division. You know what I mean? Like, nah, come on.
If the Cubs only would have launched their network like 5 years prior to.
Well, what killed them was launching it when COVID started. Is really what killed the Cubs.
Yeah. Well, also too, the amount of money isn't out there now that there's cord cutters for a big market like that anymore in terms of a channel. So I think that's a lot of it too. Right. The Dodgers and the Yankees were just in there before anybody, before the shit hit the fan. Right. In terms of cable TV, and that's a lot of that too. Yeah. But it's just, I don't know, man. Like I look at that team out there, and I'm like, each time that you think that like they could fall off, they just find another like Gavin Lux or like, you know what I mean? It's
draft well. They keep again. You lose a guy like Yasmani Grandal, and you replace him with Will Smith, who's you're the last couple of years at least a top 8 catcher in the league.
Getting jiggy with it.
It's just crazy, and over the years when they had like Adrian Gonzalez and all these guys, and you're like, what are they gonna do? And then it's like we found Max Muncy,
right.
We drafted Cody Bellinger. We traded for Mookie Betts, who's literally like the best player in baseball sometimes, besides maybe Mike Trout. Like, it's just I don't know, man.
And meanwhile, you can't watch any of it because it's on at 11 o'clock at night, which I think is just miserable. I hate the West Coast market for that. All the best players. I mean, imagine if LeBron or MJ played their whole career in LA.
The NBA is a different league, though.
No, I'm also saying, like, in terms of the time, a lot of viewership it's a mess, man. Right. It's the best player in baseball plays out that way, and some people have never stayed up late enough to watch him play. You get what I'm saying? Like, it's just, I think it's just really unfortunate, but I get it. The weather's perfect out there, and why wouldn't you?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, even you look at like the NHL right now. I mean, Vegas is obviously a popular team because they're new, but there's a lot. Connor McDavid's a perfect example because of Edmonton being out in that kind of mountain time zone market. They're not quite Pacific time zone, but you're still an hour behind Central, 2 hours behind Eastern. And he's literally like by far and beyond the best player in the league, and like. There's a lot of hockey fans that are like, I've never watched him play more than maybe a game or two if they're on national television. And it's because they're playing on the East Coast in New York and they put it on national TV. So, no, I hear you, man. The West Coast talent is unfortunate sometimes because it's just such a huge part of the population of this country is, east of the Mississippi River. So when you don't see some of the best players because they're all out west. It's unfortunate. I'm right there with you on that one. But Juice, do you have any more thoughts after a beautiful win today before we go ahead and look to tomorrow?
I do not. Let's roll it to the next.
Let's roll it to the next. Well, as we noted, with the win today, or actually I didn't know, but with the win today, the Cubs do take 2 of 3 from the Diamondbacks. So a series W, that's nice. But we get to see a new team now this week for the start of a 4-game series. At beautiful Wrigley Field, it will be the Cincinnati Reds paying a visit to our beautiful Chicago Cubs. It's a 7:05 start here local time on July 26th, which, as I mentioned, is Monday. If you're in the Reds market, you can listen to the game, WLW 700, or Bally Sports Ohio is where you can watch. And your usual suspects in the Chicagoland market, 670 The Score, WRTO 1200 and Marquee Sports Network are where you can catch this one. Pretty good pitching matchup, actually, too, tomorrow, as the Reds will be trotting out left-handed pitcher Wade Miley. I know a lot of people, if you watched baseball for a long time, you go Wade Miley. Having a really nice series, 8-4, 2.72 ERA, and 84 Ks so far this season. Again, not a guy that strikes out a ton of people, but, just a ground ball pitcher, keeps it in the yard. It does a lot of good things there. And then speaking of another guy that doesn't strike a ton of people out, but Kyle Hendricks takes the mound for the Cubs. His 3.61 ERA, maybe not the best of his career, but he's still been effective. 87 Ks for him and 12 wins for Kyle Hendricks so far this year. A guy that realistically, I don't think he flirts with 20, but realistically, he probably flirts between 16 and 18 wins this year if he continues to pitch the way he has, especially of late where he's just been dialed in, pretty much guaranteed to give you 6 innings, maybe 2 runs. He's been that good. So, Juice, I'll turn it over to you, man. What are you thinking about this one for tomorrow? Who's your fly the W pick? And just take it away, my friend.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see who's in the lineup tomorrow because I think it could be all the remaining ones from the World Series in 2016 that take the field tomorrow with KB, obviously Jason Hayward, Javi Baez, Wilson Contreras, and Kyle Hendricks taking the ball. Be one to tune in for because it may be your last opportunity to see all those guys on the field at the same time. I suggest if you're a Cub fan who holds 2016 near and dear to your heart to do it, regardless of if Kyle is going anywhere. I think it's pretty clear that one of those guys that I just named will be on a different team. Yeah. It'd be great for. I know the Reds just had a huge body blow with Nick Castellanos going on the IL, which that stinks. But I
wanted to watch him play.
Yeah, but I mean, hey, Cubs should win a decent amount of these games, right? I mean, that's the hope. And I mean, while they are going to be sellers at the deadline, I'd still want to jump on here and talk about Cubs wins. I'm not going full, NBA tank mode where I'm sitting guys and trying to figure out, ways to lose. But yeah, go out there and enjoy, maybe the last time you get to see all these guys together. And I'll be tuned in. I know that. I'm going to make sure that I pop a squat right before and enjoy the game tomorrow because, like I said, it's going to be, kind of a surreal kind of thing maybe. It'd be one of the last times, like I said, that they are all out there. With that, I'm going to take Chris Bryant as my fly the W player of the game. I'm going to take him until he's in another uniform. I think that's my tribute to Chris. And I truly think that he's going to be the one that's in a different uniform out of the ones that I named. Yeah. That's a sad thing to say. But with that said, value drives who gets dealt, right? And Chris has the highest value out of the ones we named. So I'll take KB and hope that Kyle goes and throws a gem and Joe Madden doesn't take him out too early. And maybe Jason Hayward has a nice speech before the game. And, I'm going to try to do all the things 2016 tomorrow. Maybe I'll get some pizza because that was my go-to meal for game 5, 6, and 7 that they won. I'm going to do all those things because, like I said, there's very little time left for us to enjoy that. I was listening to the game on my way up for the first 3 innings today. So I actually caught Chris Bryant's home run on the radio telecast and driving alone and listening to that. It was hard not to just have a little tear in your eye, just to think, thanks for all the great times because I did tweet out right when that happened, that could be his last Cub home run, very well could have been. And I'm going to say that all week until, it's sold that he's going somewhere else. But with that said, I'll throw it over to you. And my advice to lifelong Cub fans who truly enjoyed 2016, watch tomorrow. That's my advice.
Yeah, I am right there with you. It is somber, seeing Brizzo go back to back today. Everybody's like, wow, that's the, whatever, I think the 8th time or something that they've done that. And it's like, and it could be the last. And it's just like, that's just a kick in the stomach. And it's, again, it's one of those things where you think with your heart and you're like, I don't want this to end. But then you think with your head and you're like, well, I want the Cubs to be good again too. So it's this, it's this internal war I think that a lot of Cubs fans are having with themselves about the state of the roster. And like you said, just enjoy it. I mean, statistically, KB is a great pick against Miley. In 18 at-bats in his career, he's batting .444 with 2 homers and 3 ribbies. So certainly not.
Didn't even look at that.
No, but I just wanted to let you know. I wanted to let you know that was a good pick, even statistically. And you know what? I'm intrigued. I'm really intrigued. I'll be tuned in as well, pretty much all week. I actually might even try to get a ticket to one of these games in the next couple
Yeah,
of days.
yeah.
And
If you can go,
yeah, just get out
that's
there one more time for for KB
throw the
and
KB jersey on and
absolutely,
stand and cheer when he goes up to bat 4 times. That's
absolutely.
my advice to everybody.
Yeah, and I think I'm gonna have to do that. I'm just hoping for a Cubby win, like you said. Obviously, with our boy Nick being hurt, that's a big blow for this Reds team. I just hope Eugenio Suarez doesn't have a good game because he just somehow always finds a way to hit against Kyle Hendricks, even though his average is absolutely dog shit. But I would like to go Willie because he's batting 421 and 19 at bats against Miley with 2 ribbies. But I am actually going to go with the MLB tied league leader in wins, and that's Kyle Hendricks. So I'm going to
Good move.
take the professor tomorrow. Looking for his 13th win, which would give him the league lead. He's currently tied with Julio Urias out in L.A. Dodgers. Speaking of a team that we just talked about here a little bit, with 12 wins right now on the season. So, hell, I mean, it's funny how even in this year for the Cubs, where they're below 500, like Kyle Hendricks could legitimately be the MLB wins leader at the end of the season. Like it just could happen that way because there's been so many injuries to top pitchers, and a lot of guys. It's a lot of no decisions and different things like that. So. I mean, you got a lot of really good pitchers that are stuck at like 10 wins right now. So who knows? I mean, if Kyle keeps pitching the way he's been pitching and he gets run support when the Cubs, when he's on the mound, who knows? Maybe we got that little feather in the cap for this year. Like, hey,
Yeah, be nice,
good
right?
job, Kyle. Yeah, like, hey, you led the league in wins. At least something good happened this year to the Cubs. So, I'm gonna go ahead and take Hendricks tomorrow. I think, I think that'll be a good pick. It'll make me feel good, and I love the KB pick. And like I said, I'm gonna try to get out to a ball game maybe this week, and hopefully take in Chris Bryant in the Cubs uniform before he's, I don't want to say for sure traded, but indications point to the fact that he'll be somewhere else come this weekend. Yeah, so it's gonna be one of those things. But Juice, any final thoughts today, or should we go ahead and wrap this thing up?
Wrap her up, but hey. If this is the last one I'm on before they trade KB, I'm going to say thanks, KB, every time before I leave. So that's my final thought for the night. Thanks, KB.
I love it. Yeah, thank you, KB, because, hey, who knows? I mean, life happens, if we get ripped off a pod. It was nice seeing him go yard today, and it was nice seeing him and Rizzo go back-to-back. I think that was definitely the highlight of the win today. Nice seeing a good day out of Williams, too, but let's be honest. That's what we all enjoyed was the back-to-back. So, well, ladies and gentlemen, want to remind you Cubs on Tap is the official Cubs podcast of the On Tap Sports Network. You can go and check out all of our great work over at www.ontapsportsnet.com and at OnTapSportsNet on social media. You can follow the pod-specific account, which is at Cubbies. That's CUBBIES on Tap. You can find us on Twitter and on Instagram. I am at Luce on Tap on Twitter. Juice is at Juice on Tap on Twitter. You can follow us there. Follow all of our other great people as well, at Cody on Tap, at Marty Laval, at The Riot 326, at Joe Maris, and so many more. Juice, you got something for me here, buddy?
Yeah, Jeff Passan reporting San Diego Padres acquiring second baseman outfielder Adam Frazier from the Pirates.
Oh,
so just the on the way out type thing. San Diego seems they're going to be active in the trade market, which we thought, but surprised that one domino has fallen. Now maybe that moves some
the Giants.
Maybe that moves some Cubs deals here.
Yeah,
a little closer towards the diving board.
Yeah, no, well said. That'll be something we'll have to keep an eye on. Now the fun has just begun. Now that the week is going to open here tomorrow, with everybody coming out of the weekend and is like, all right, it's time to get to business and make some trades.
If you're a White Sox fan too, you're definitely like, what the hell? They need a second baseman, and that's if you were going to replace a guy like Nick Madrigal, Adam Frazier would have been a nice grab for them.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see what they do. I mean, they certainly could go scoop Escobar away from the Diamondbacks, who's 65 RBIs this year. He's like 7th in the NL right now in RBIs.
Got to think it only gets more and more expensive depending on the return, though, as teams have less and less to pick from.
Yeah, as the market continues to set itself. Absolutely agree, man. And that's certainly something that, hopefully you and I get to talk about again this week, but, we at Cubs on Tap will be talking about. And not only just, on Tap Sportsnet have Cubs coverage and Cubs on Tap. We got Bears, we got Bulls, we got Blackhawks. NHL draft was just this past weekend. Free agency opens soon. The Bulls draft and free agency is right around the corner as well. The Bears training camp is opening this week. So a lot of big storylines from the other teams in town. And yes, Cubs fans, we all have friends that are White Sox fans. Go ahead and bring them over to us too. Our guys over at Sox on Tap do an incredible job covering the Southsiders. So once again, you can find all of our great stuff, www.ontapsportsnet.com, at OnTapSportsNet on social media. The OnTap Sports Network, go ahead and check out what's on tap in Chicago sports. Well, Juice, this was always a pleasure. The Juice and Luce show is always a good time. Happy Sunday to you, my friend. Happy Sunday to everybody. Hopefully you have a good rest of your weekend before the work week. It's going to be a busy week. It's going to be a very busy week in Chicago sports, and be sure to join in with us here at OnTap Sportsnet as we cover all of it. So, Juice, what do you say, buddy? We get out of here the only way we know how.
Let's go Cubs.
Let's go Cubbies.